Children, you have studied about different physical quantities in this chapter, which are initial velocity, final velocity, acceleration, time taken, and distance or displacement. All these physical quantities are interrelated to each other. Velocity is displacement upon time, acceleration is rate of change of velocity, displacement is the change in position. But the question is, how are they connected with each other, or what is the nature of the relationship between these physical quantities? If we are given some of these terms, then how do we find others? This problem is solved by using equations of motion. There are three equations of motion which relates all these physical quantities. Okay? But there is a condition, and the condition is that these equations of motion are valid only when the acceleration is constant. That means when the body is moving under uniform acceleration, as well as when the body is moving in a straight line. These equations of motion do not hold true or are invalid when the body is moving non-uniformly. We will now do some of the questions based on these equations of motion. The first one is, a body initially at rest travels a distance of 100 meters in 5 seconds with constant acceleration. That means we will be able to apply the equation of motion here because the body is moving with constant acceleration. Okay? So initially when the body is at rest means what? The initial velocity is 0. So initial velocity is 0. The distance traveled is 100 meters. So this is what is written here. And the time taken is 5 seconds. So when we have to find acceleration here, so we'll be using the second equation of motion. As you can see, in the second and the third only we have the distance value given, and therefore we cannot use the first equation of motion. In the third equation of motion there is no time factor, so we have left with no choice other than the second equation of motion. So when we put all the values here, we get acceleration as 8 meters per second square. So that was the first part of the question. Now comes the second part, where you have to find final velocity. So here we will be using the first equation of motion, and on putting the values we get final velocity as 40 meters per second.